Alright, everybody. So, I realized that the name of my company is Mountain Wisdom LLC. The name of this page is Mountain Wisdom. And I haven't said a single thing about the mountains yet. So, today, I thought I'd share a little story. It's the story of Bear Shit Mountain. Now, when I made a decision a while back to move to Montana. I didn't really plan on it. It wasn't the goal. I actually thought I was going to move to Colorado, and I did. And then I had a friend who lived up in Montana that told me maybe it was a better fit. And I went, it was fantastic. And my friend had a hiking group that he was starting because he was just getting into backpacking and he wanted me to join because I'd been backpacking for over a decade by then. In fact, the year prior we met right after I had finished hiking the Appalachian Trail. So what we ended up doing is going on a hike, and he let me lead this hike. Most of the hikes he'd been leading because it was his group. It was back in the days of Meetup, when that was a little more popular. And we go on this hike, and I say, how about we go here? And he's like, and I said, it'll be fine. Let's go. So we went, and then I looked at the map, I said, oh, maybe we can go here. How about here? Next thing you know, we have decided to explore Well Off Trail. Now, anyone who knows me, that's sort of my jam. It's not just in my day-to-day life that I like to go off book. It's definitely in the mountains. I love exploring where people haven't been. Needless to say, the hike turned out to be a lot longer and more challenging than my friend and the other person who was with us was expecting. We eventually ended up finding this trail, and we're hiking down this narrow trail. He's like, are you sure this trail? I was like, it's a trail. Now, yeah, it was just a herd path. And if you don't know what a herd path is, it's a trail that an animal made. Sometimes it could be people, but like it's an unmaintained trail. It was never designed to exist. You won't find it on a map. It was just a matter of the way I took us started to get too long. It was a little more advanced than I probably should have taken them on. And sometimes we forget that, right? And we forget that when we reach a certain point of competence or ability. It's easy to forget how hard something is if it's no longer hard for you. And that was a mistake I made. So, needless to say, we broke out the map, decided how we were going to get down, because we need an alternate route so we could get down before dark. And what we ended up doing again is following these herd paths. So it's kind of switching down. It's Montana. Right? It's a pretty wild place, which is what I loved about it. Well, we're going down this side hilling and going down this section of this ridge, because originally the plan was we were going to hike up to this ridge where another trail joined and we'd hike down the trail. But again, it was getting too late, so we decided pivot. We're actually going to go, it's like we can cut over here and kind of make a horseshoe down and save a fair bit of mileage. And the terrain didn't look too tough, so I thought we'd do it, and we did, and ultimately worked out. But on the way down, it became very, very, very evident why this particular trail worked so well for us. Because it was a bear trail. We figured this out around the third obvious sign. And I'll leave that to your imagination, but it is exactly what you think. And eventually we finally got down. We got down to the valley that we had originally come out of and joined up with the regular trail and hiked out. And we did make it before sunset, so I was pretty happy about that. I bet a lot of you at this point are thinking, what was he doing? That sounds terrible, frightening. Wasn't actually that frightening. Even my friends, even though it was definitely something they hadn't done, they weren't that scared. They were nervous about timing in the sunlight, daylight. But what I want to point out is that when I talked to my friend, and when I talked to him years after it happened, he still talks about when I moved to Montana and Bear Shit Mountain. And the reason he talks about it is because even though it was uncomfortable and a little unnerving for him at the time, and very challenging, in retrospect, it was a memory that he really cherished. He kind of decided it was iconic. This is iconic me. This is iconic Andrew. It's like hiking with Andrew. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be wild. Now, it's not always. It is whenever I can pull it off. I can convince people to, right? Yeah. But I don't mean it to be. It just kind of turns out that way a lot because I do love to explore. But it was a great moment for him as well. It created a memory for him that he's held on to fondly, regardless of whatever difficulties were involved. And a lot of times, I think we miss that when we're looking at our growth and where we want to go. We like the clear path, which is fine. Doing things way off book isn't everybody's cup of tea, and it doesn't have to be the way people accomplish things. There's a lot of ways to do it, but it wasn't that we went off trail that made it so interesting. I mean, I guess to a point because of, the bear sign. But what made it memorable was that it was more intense than he had planned. It was a little more, it was more extreme than he thought he was going to do. But when he was done, that stayed with him. It had more meaning. If we had just gone with our regular hike, gone to this one point where we planned on going to, stopped and went back, would it have been an enjoyable trip? Yes. Would it have been a nice moment for our group? It would have. Right? It would have still been something enjoyable. But I can't say it would have been memorable. In fact, after that trip, ever since that trip, we started doing more things. Were they a little more regulated? Did we tame some things down? Yes. But it was that pivotal point where we did that changed his mindset on what he could do, for one. It made a micro shift in his comfort level, and it made a beautiful moment. And that beautiful moment, again, was only possible because he was willing to push himself. And even though, yes, he was like, okay, we need to turn around. It's fine. Finding himself at that level and then coming back out of it okay, safe, and fine made it beautiful, made it something joyful, because it was a level of accomplishment that he would have not done. He didn't know he could do that, but he could, and he did. And the other person who went with us did too, and surprisingly and gratefully, they still continue to hike with us. But again, that same type of experience shows up in our lives. It's always the extreme or the moments that push us beyond ourselves that we choose or we accept to endure or we challenge ourselves to, those are the things that really stick. And yes, sometimes those are bad, right? I'm sure some of you have been in terrible situations. I've been in dangerous situations that were not so fun, and I'm super glad I'm still here because of. And they weren't fond moments, but they were memorable. And when negative moments do show up, right, in our lives, they almost always will. There's going to be things out of our control that show up to create challenges. And they're not fun, but they are impactful. We remember them sometimes. Sometimes they're traumas, sometimes they're just momentary fears, but we remember them. And I think that's actually why it's so important to challenge ourselves in positive ways. Because what we don't want to end up doing is challenging ourselves only when we have to because something bad is happening. The more we're able or willing to challenge ourselves in the pursuit of enjoyment, of fulfillment, of doing something we want of our own choosing, we can help rewrite our understanding of challenge, our opinion of challenge. A lot of people hear challenge and they groan, right? Why do we groan? Because so many challenges in our lives have shown up against our will. But if we start choosing it, we get to change that narrative. We get to change that challenge narrative from challenge sucks to challenge can leave beautiful memories. And I don't necessarily expect you to think of Bear Shit Mountain the next time you decide to challenge yourself to something. But I do strongly encourage that you do challenge yourself to something. Because it's the only way you can ever overcome the fear and the negative bias around it. And overcoming that bias frees you from so much energy and so much resistance when you can reframe the way you see challenge. And you can experience the challenges as beautiful outcomes regardless of the difficulty.